So in today's class, we're going to take a look at validation. In the previous class, we talked about accessibility. The next step is validation in our course project. So in validation, we check to see if our website meets accessibility standards. It also checks for other things. So let's take a look at what those things are. Okay, first of all, what does validating HTML CSS mean? Well, validating a page means using a computer program to check your web page for errors. If there's any syntax errors, if you forgot a bracket or a semicolon, or you used the wrong name for a class, things like that. An HTML validator checks to make sure that the HTML code on your web page complies with the standards set by the W3C that issues the HTML standards. So W3C is a official kind of standard body, the official organization that sets the standards for HTML and CSS, really anything to do with websites, okay? So there are various types of HTML validators. Some only check for errors, like if you forgot a semicolon. Others make suggestions about your code, like if it doesn't meet accessibility standards, if you didn't enter alt text in your image, okay? It might also tell you when it might lead to unexpected errors, okay? Same with validating CSS. A CSS validator checks for your style sheet in the same manner. It checks to make sure that it complies with the CSS standards set by W3C. There's also a few which tell you which CSS features are supported by which browsers. Remember that not all browsers are equal in the CSS implementation, right? So it might tell you that, okay, well, it will work in these browsers, but not in these other ones. So you might want to offer a different solution for those other browsers. So why do we want to validate our HTML and CSS code? Well, it helps cross-browser compatibility and cross-platform compatibility and future compatibility. It also helps search engine visibility. Now let's take a look in more depth what all those things mean. So for example, if you create a website that appears really good on your favorite browser, on your desktop or whatever, but it doesn't mean that your web page is free of HTML and CSS errors. It might just mean that it's not showing up on your browser on your computer because your browser that you installed might have an existing bug or some quirk in it. So another person using the exact same browser that doesn't share that particular bug is going to end up viewing a page that doesn't show up correctly. So it's also possible that later on when you update your browser, that bug's going to go away and your page will be broken and it won't show properly. Okay, so coding your page that is correct without errors is important because it will result in pages that are more likely to work across browsers and platforms. Because sometimes I have students saying, yeah, I did something that I wasn't supposed to here in my HTML or CSS, but it still works, and that's all that matters, right? Like, it looks fine. Why care about standards when it looks fine? I can show you that it looks fine on my browser. It does matter because just because it looks fine on your browser today, it doesn't mean that it will tomorrow, and it doesn't mean that it will look fine on somebody else's exact same browser or a different browser. So it's really important that you adhere to standards, the proper standards, okay? You might say, oh, once in a while, I don't put a semicolon in and it looks totally fine. Maybe on your browser for today, and that might change, right? It's also a form of insurance against future versions of browsers, since all browsers aim towards compliance with the existing HTML, CSS standards. Every browser company wants to be compliant. Everybody wants to follow standards. All the browser companies want to. So if you're creating something that doesn't follow standards, once everybody else achieve those standards, your website is not going to work properly. Okay, the next reason is search engine visibility. When there are errors in a web page, browsers typically try to compensate in different ways, right? Some may ignore the broken element. Some search engines will ignore it. Some browsers will ignore it, and other browsers make assumptions about what the web designer was trying to do and makes a best guess. So the problem is that when search engines obtain your page and try to parse them for keywords, they'll have to make certain decisions about what to do with these errors. So like browsers, different search engines will make different decisions about those errors, resulting in certain parts of your web page maybe even the entire page not being indexed at all. So the safest way to make sure that search engines see the page you want them to see is to present them an error-free page. If it's too problematic, it might not get indexed. There's no dispute about which page comprises of the content and which one comprises of the code then. There's no confusion for the search engine. All right, so I'm going to get out of this PowerPoint now.